Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And now we're already beginning part two because it was already getting so long. I wanted to end it, but I know that there are a few things that I still have left. And as I said, I'll keep on adding to the research so that we can all draw to a conclusion that we're all happy with. Right? There's one thing that I have to mention, and I better start off part two by mentioning this. And that is the one thing that everybody has had in common, even the scholars that have agreed or disagreed, even those that have taken a stricter stance, those that have taken the more, that have made a distinction, a line of, a line of distinction stance. They all have one thing in common that I've understood, and that is that they have talked, as I've said, I've actually mentioned this in part one, but I thought I should go into more detail because I've mentioned this time and again about lifelike, isn't it? And I think I should now use these were my words, lifelike, but now let me use the words that the different scholars have, tried to explain more clearly, where they have all basically said that when you draw a portrait of any animate object, be it any animal, any bird, any human being, basically in great detail, as in so great a detail that it's lifelike. Again, that's what I kept on saying, lifelike. That so they're saying that if you, for example, just like when we just do a basic drawing of a human being or a turtle or an animal, which is more or less like an like a cartoon, for example, or just a basic drawing, right? That is acceptable. But if you draw with great detail, as if you're literally making it exactly as if as the real thing, and you draw the whole face and the eyes and everything and give it that lifelike, you know, that real aspect, then that, they say, is basically what goes wrong here. So that is what makes it all wrong. So if you just have, for example, a general carving, for example, you know how there have been traditions of wood carvings where you make sceneries, where you draw palm trees and you draw animals beneath it, but the animals are just figures of animals. You can just distinguish the fact that, okay, this is an elephant, for example, but there's no great detail given to those carvings, right? It's not like they've created every single wrinkle of that elephant and the eyes and everything. These are just basic carvings, right? So keep in means that will be okay. But if you're drawing with great detail, or carving with great detail, that it would be almost as if you could blow a soul into it, in other words, which is what, this is what invokes the displeasure, that God says that, okay, I'll try to invoke the soul out of it, or into it, and you will not be able to. So again, it's something that can allude to, incline towards idolatry, right? So it's the same thing that I've basically said in part one, but I thought I should just make it more clear that they all seem to, those especially who have the stricter stance about animate objects, they all seem to have this clause that they've added, that but if you draw these animate objects in parts, for example, if you just draw a basic human figure but you haven't given exact great detail to it, it's fine. If you've drawn an animal but without great detail, it's fine. If you've drawn a bird but you haven't counted its actual feathers, for example, or drawn its face in a way that it's real, or any animal, any sea animal, anything. So if basic drawings, in other words, are okay, but lifelike drawings and carvings are not okay. Okay, so here we're making more progress. This is a very good point that some of the scholars have made. This is a point I think that is worth noticing. Although, I mean, I thought it wasn't actually something, I mean, uh, but it is something worth mentioning actually. And that is that, notice how in the Muslim, I think, although I actually did kind of say it in part one, seriously, I'm half dead right now, so forgive me if I have actually said this in part one. But as I said, notice how the Muslim artists, they work less on animate, in fact they work next to never on animate objects, and they move towards geometric patterns, they move towards making sceneries, They move towards drawing mosques, mosques and the Kaaba even, and they go towards calligraphy. But as we've touched on calligraphy also, um, if you're putting a Quranic verse on the wall as a calligraphic art, then that too can be insulting to the Quran itself if you're not even going to read it, right? And that is why I personally have never been very inclined towards putting, although I really like it, it's very beautiful and all, but strangely, to be honest, I have actually never been inclined towards putting anything calligraphic on the wall because I have always had this slight discomfort that I probably am just going to be, why would I want to do that? I think it's a bit offensive. But each to his own again, as they said, as long as if you're reading what you've put on display, then good. Otherwise, please don't, because that is an insult. So, but yes, the Muslim artists move more towards calligraphy, they move towards scenic, um, paintings, they move towards drawing inanimate objects. Yes, this is something that I have noticed. This is something I think all of us have noticed, that the Muslim world, the artists are focused, even as I said in part one, that even you've noticed that even if they work on sculpting, you will see them sculpting inanimate objects. You wouldn't see a Muslim artist sculpt a humanoid figure, really, except unless it is a consignment that is made, for example, by a government or a bureaucratic agency, that, oh, can you please make us a small bust of the founder of our country or something, because we have to put it in, on maybe in a museum or on display in one of our halls or whatever, that is something else. But generally, yeah, no, you see them, even in calligraphy, actually, you will see many artists that have calligraphed poetry, not just the Quranic verses and all, but they've calligraphed poetry in the form of art. And that is beautiful. That is something that one can be inclined to. And they've drawn flowers, and they've drawn the oceans, ships, again, inanimate. So you will see that in the Muslim world. I guess that is why you've seen more and more creativity in the Muslim world in art, because they have drawn extremely exceptionally creative inanimate objects and geometrical patterns, especially, and they've done a lot of work on, creating little beautiful, uh, arts, basically works of art that you don't usually find in the Western world, which has literally been more into portraits and into sculpting and into making animate objects, actually. So, although, yeah, there too, they do make other objects and all, but yes, you do tend to see a more inclination in the West towards your general generic animate objects, pieces of art, as opposed to the Muslim world, where you see these kind of more creative forms of art, which is, which again shows, it actually shows that the Muslim artists too, at the end of the day, prefer to steer clear of this controversy, and, just to make, I guess it is something that even the artists feel that, okay, we'd much rather not create a thing that can lead towards uh, a negative path. So best to be more creative in other ways, which is a good thing. It shows a lot of awareness. It shows a lot of, you know, it does show the inclination of a Muslim artist, right? When it comes to generally making pieces of art. And this, as I said, is 100% halal art. There is nowhere in Islam where this kind of art is condemned in any way. Of course, now let me make it clear once again, this particular point that I made in part one, that posters of actors or singers or idols that you're a fan of, as I said, because this is actually a concept that kind of goes nearer to shirk. That is why those posters, obviously, as I said before, there's no debate there, but that is something, because if you're putting up posters of somebody you idolize, on your wall, that is obviously a no, you know. So Why is that obviously a no? Because, as I said, you see, idolizing somebody, why are we calling them idols? IDOLS. And when you're idolizing that person, it means it's nearing to, it's mimicking idol worshipping. It means that you consider them your idols. It means that you could worship them. Why do we call fans? It's short for fanatics. These are fanatics about somebody. They are fanatic about somebody, and that person has assumed the role of an idol. So just the words themselves should be able to tell you where you're standing here, you know. So, but if you just like somebody, you admire somebody, I understand and all. But again, displaying their pictures on your wall because you idolize them, that is so obviously a no. But I thought that this warranted repeating in part two, because this is something that I think is so obvious, really, you know, that it shouldn't even need to be explained. But apparently, I think we should start explaining it, because the trend of having idols and being fans and idolizing people and all, again, as I said, admiring somebody is something else, putting up somebody as your role model is something else. But then don't use the word idolize, please. Try to understand the meaning behind the word to idolize, and then refrain from using it if that's really not what you mean. Just,
Right.
a tip here.
So regarding dolls again, if in case anybody has still a controversy here, although I did mention the hadith where Hazrat Aisha said that she had friends who would come and play with her, and they had dolls, and when the Prophet came in and they hid, then he said, what were you playing with? Come and you can play. So he told them, just go on playing, right? um but here's another hadith in case you're still a bit, because as I said, that it has been mentioned by the scholars, especially the Hanbali and the Maliki and the Shafi scholars and all. They have all said that dolls in any form, 2D, 3D, like full figured, it doesn't matter. Animals, it doesn't matter. They're still accepted. They're not prohibited. And again, one of the other ahadiths that is used to affirm this is that Hazrat Aisha said that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, came back from the Battle of Tabuk or Khyber, and there was a curtain in her alcove, and the wind blew and lifted the curtain, showing some dolls with which Hazrat Aisha was playing. And he said, "What is this, O Aisha?" And she said, "My daughters." And among them he saw a mare with wings made of leather. I think that is the one that some people say that she had a horse that was like a unicorn, but actually I don't know if they're both the same, because this is entirely not a unicorn. This is a mare with wings, and it was made of leather. And he said, "And what is this that I see in the midst of them?" And she said, "A mare." And he said, "What is this on it?" She said, "Wings." He said, "A mare with wings?" And she said, "Have you not heard that Suleiman had a horse with wings?" She said that the Prophet smiled so broadly at what she said that, she could literally see his eye teeth. So that tells you, this is actually what led the Malikis and the Shafis and the Hanbalis to interpret that this is an exemption that is so very clearly made, that toys that are made for girls or for kids generally, in order to, educate them. In fact, they say that even when you have those, as I said, that as you've noticed, there are baby dolls that are almost, I mean, they're pretty real, right? They're actual baby dolls that are made for girls and all. And they said that that is also acceptable, because it is so obvious that even though it is in the form of a human, but it is so obvious that it is for educational purposes, for kids to, in order to understand and in order to get an education, be it regarding animals, or be it regarding imaginary or real animals, or be it regarding imaginary or real people, or people like figures. So Hence, Al Halimi, he used this report and others to support his argument, and he said that there are two benefits of that in the case of girls, one immediate and one which comes later. The immediate benefit is that they have fun, which is one of the most effective means of child development. If a child is, and I'm quoting Al Halimi here, okay? So if a child is well taken care of and feels happy and content, his development will be stronger and better. This is because joy energizes the mind, which in turn energizes the soul, and that has an effect on the body and produces physical strength. The benefit, which is seen later on, is that through that play, the girls learn how to deal with children. They love them, they feel compassion for them, and that becomes second nature to them. So when they grow up and see for themselves the things that they used to play at, they will find that the compassion they used to play at is something very real indeed. So I mean, I think I think that the this again makes it very clear that the intention with which you're creating something or making something is what is more important. That is what, again, Islam is all about, the intention. So we're getting the same things clearer and clearer, right? So we're understanding that intention is fundamental. We're understanding that the purpose, the meaning behind whatever it is that you create is fundamental. We're understanding that animate objects that are made with that are not exactly lifelike. I mean, they can be recognized to be what they are. You can recognize that this is an elephant, this is a turtle, this is a fish, this is a bird, but there are no intricate details given on their faces. The emphasis has been given on their faces, that if they do not have the eyes, the nose, the mouth, then it's okay. But the thing is, again, in many decoration pieces, you actually do have eyes, nose, and mouth, but they're not intricate details. They're not lifelike, isn't it? They're literally just painted on, so that you just know that these are eyes and this is a nose, right? But they're not given that great lifelike detail. So that is there as well. But we can now understand that animate objects, even if just drawn generally without given intricate details, are okay. So for example, if you have butterflies, but you know how we draw butterflies? We really don't draw their faces, do we? We just draw their wings, we draw a line for their body, and we draw, their feelers, and that's it. Where are the eyes? Where's the nose? Where's the mouth? Nose? Where's the mouth? Right? So, and similarly, when you draw patterns of birds on fabric, you don't draw their faces. You just draw the outline of the birds. You just put a dot for an eye, maybe. But we're getting somewhere here, as I said. We're getting right, and places. Re Hazrat Aisha again. Here is if you remember in part one, I said that I don't know why Zakir Naik mentioned the same hadith that I mentioned in this podcast in the part one, that he seemed to have reversed it for some odd reason. Well, I've confirmed. I don't know which, if he was talking about the same hadith or not, and if he by mistake reversed the whole thing, because yes, I have reconfirmed it. It is exactly the same as I have quoted it, as I've read it, that that was indeed a woolen cloth or fabric or whatever, call it a curtain, whatever, call it a wall rug, whatever you like to call it, but she had hung it, in a section, which in the hadith that I read is that she had hung it on the door, okay. And the images, according to now what I am reaffirming, is according to Sheikh Dr. Yasir Qazi, the images on that, curtain or wall carpet or whatever you like to call it, were actually like birds. Okay, I didn't see in any other place that the images were mentioned to be birds, but maybe he's done his research and he says that they were like birds. So as I said, I just wanted to make that clear that yes, that was very correctly quoted. Okay, there was nothing wrong with the hadith that I quoted, with the tradition mentioned by Hazrat Aisha. I don't know why Zakir Naik quoted it up in the opposite
sense, because as I said, it was indeed that, the Prophet ripped it off and
Right.
said
The
that,
people who are punished the most on the day of judgment are those who are trying to mimic the creation of Allah. Right. These are the exact words of the Prophet as he tore that wall carpet down, and said, yeah, I mean, these were his words. So, and as the hadith continues, she decided to then cut it up and turn them into cushion covers or pillow covers. Okay, so I
I
got that one
think
right too.
without going
Let's move on.
further, because all I'll be doing is repeating the same hadiths and repeating the same verses from the Quran, I think we can well understand here what the running motif is here, right? That is, when the Prophet talks about imitating God's creation, right? He's talking about imitating God's creation. He's talking about how in hell God will ask that sculptor or that painter, uh, that, okay, bring the soul out of it, blow a soul into it, make it alive, make it come to life. You understand? These two things, I think, make it very obvious that the running theme here is about, again, as I said in part one, it's about alluding to shirk. They're talking about those people who make lifelike images that can allude or incline towards idol worshipping. Okay? They're talking about the intention, the purpose behind these images. And again, by images, they're basically talking about figurines, statues, animals, people, right? Living animate objects, right? And as Ibn Abbas had said to a person who loved to draw, that, if you're so inclined to draw, go and draw the mountains and the rivers, right? So basically, just try to stay away from animate objects, especially if you're an artist who loves to draw in great detail and can give lifelike imagery to your paintings. So, I mean, keeping that in mind, again, if you see cartoons, when you're drawing cartoons, they do not fall under the haram category because in the cartoons, they're not lifelike. You understand? It's so obvious that it's just a drawing. It's so obvious. So, similarly, when we're drawing, for animation for your basic animation, again, it doesn't fall into that category because it's so obviously not the real thing. So, what are we getting from this whole running theme from part one all the way to part two? Clarifying, reclarifying, reclarifying. It goes back to the original idea that Islam is all about common sense and practicality. Islam is all about intentions and purposes. Okay? Why would God give the worst punishment to an artist compared to somebody who's committed genocide, compared to a rapist, compared to a murderer? How is an artist worse than them? No, this doesn't make sense. What makes sense here is that God is talking about those who have tried to imitate his creation. You understand? Those who have created images that can provoke, invoke, incline, allude towards shirk, towards idolatry, okay, towards idol worship. Because as I said, that, even if you talk about photographs, because essentially photographs are all about keeping records, and in Islam it is not at all haram because photography, the main concept of photography is making a mirror image. So anything that you can see, you're taking the photograph of. So you're literally just making a copy of the real thing, right? You're not recreating it. You're literally making a digital copy of the real thing. This is why it is not haram. Which again, then I would remind you, essentially, when you're drawing something, you're making the copy of a real thing, which is not haram. It will become haram if you're drawing something with all intents and purposes to make it so lifelike that it would be glorified and lead towards idol worship. If you're creating a statue of any animal or any bird or any human being that is supposed to be exhibited in all its glory, again, remember this, as I said in part one, look at the main idea here. The display of that wall carpet or that wall rug or that curtain or whatever you like to call it, the display of that fabric angered the prophet. But that same fabric with birds images, I mean, according to and all the different hadiths that I've read, I didn't see bird images, but and the one that, but it seems that Sheikh Dr. Yasser Qazi, he seems to have found, another narrative in which it was specifically mentioned that they were birds. Okay, so you had birds on display on the wall or on the door. That angered the prophet, but that same fabric, when used as cushion covers, he was okay with it. And the hadith where he says that angels will not enter the house where there are images, the complete hadith says that the angels will not enter the house where there are images, save those that are stitched onto fabric. So images, as in images of birds or animals or such lifelike figures, lifelike, no, okay, let's put it this way, images of animate objects or stitched or sewn onto the fabric is okay. Again, what does that tell you? The purpose behind the image, the purpose behind the sculpting, the purpose behind the drawing, the purpose behind the sketching. That is what it's all boiling down to. God cannot say that an artist will be given the worst punishment ever compared to a rapist or a mass murderer. I'm sure that when God is saying that he is going to give the worst punishment to a creator, to a recreator, as in a person who has recreated and mimicked God's creation to such a point that it could be used as a deity or as an idol. The purpose, the intent, the intention, it is, again, no matter how much deeply I try to go into this, no matter how much I try to listen, no matter how much I try to read, it all keeps on boiling down to the same fact that it really is all about intentions and purposes. Again, I would say, you do you. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, you do it. But Islam is not a nonsensical religion. Please don't degrade it to be a nonsensical religion. It's all about common sense and practicality. It's all about intentions and purposes. It's all about meaning behind the act. That is the first law. Look at the first law of Islam. The foundation of Islam is all actions are judged by intentions. There you have it. And then again, animate objects, again, those who maintain the strict ideology, who maintain that no, animate objects are out of the question, but even they at the end are saying, they all agree that animate objects that do not have detailed facial composites, right, or compositions, where their facial features are not given, those are not considered haram, right? So then one would say that it means that as long as it's not lifelike, it's not haram. Again, I would say Allah knows best, but Allah has a lot of common sense. We may lack common sense, but Allah is Allah at the end of the day. And we should place our faith in Him. And you just do what makes you comfortable, but really it's, at the end of the day, it really is just that. Okay, it's all about intents and purposes. Best of luck. This is me saying a final goodbye on this, because again, as I said, no matter how deep you go into this debate, it will end up right where we started. And I will maintain what I said. It's all about what you're using them for, how you're using them, why you're making them, why you're displaying them, how you're displaying them, what intents and purposes there are, and what it really is, what the point is behind all of it. Okay, this is me signing out. Finally, Khuda Hafiz.